thank you so much for joining me on When Worlds Unite, HR and AI. I have here with me Scott Prendergast, and he is not only an amazing author. Hello. Here we go. Great book, by the way. I'm halfway done. I am sorry. I am still in school, so my professor says I have to read her books first. But I told her that your book is really, really awesome. I'm actually halfway into it. And I have to tell you, I've been taking notes as if this is a diary. So this has been really, really amazing. This is a great book. I've seen your interviews on the news. I've seen you do your own plugins when you're out, when we're doing presentations and we're out at university and stuff like that. But honestly, there's nothing like a good book review from an absolute amateur. Hi, amateur here. And it really is just an easy read. I mean, you write in our generation. You're professional. You're not academic. So I'm writing academically. My team at work, they hate me. They're like, dude, this is not that complicated. They're like, you're writing like you're gonna write like a dissertation for a client. I'm like, oh crap. So you write as if it was as you're talking to me. So I feel like I'm reading your diary. And I know it is somewhat of a style of a memoir, where you have it structured in more of like coaching, educational, kind of like I want to tell my story, but tell it in a way that will help guide someone. And honestly, so many things that you went through, I'm like, dude, I've done it too. Like, honestly, I'm on the gay side of it. But the crazy thing is though, like, the things that you went through, like I went through it too. Granted, you were nervous about girls. I was nervous about boys, right? And I was like, oh my God, he felt the same way I did. And wow, like that's crazy that I was able to connect with you like that. But I'm talking too much because I'm totally into this. But why are we here, Scott? I mean, honestly, your book is really awesome. That one, I was very impressed about that. Two, I loved your presentation. I know we've done speaking engagements together, and just you're super inspirational, and you're genuine. Just exactly the way you are on stage is exactly how I've experienced you offline, which is really nice because some people have stage personas and then they have a different internal persona. And I think we talked about this at the event. I think we were like a few cocktails in though. You're a few cocktails in and you're like, yeah, man, like I just gotta be me, and that's who I am. And then that's when you plugged in your book and I'm like, yep, gotta read it. And literally who you are and how I've worked with you and how we've interacted together professionally and personally, you're literally the same person in your writing. It's kind of like, it's really refreshing because when you when I read like more complicated novels or professional stuff like that, the authors usually disconnect themselves from their stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but not memoirs, right? Memoirs tend to truly try to grasp the voice and the essence of the person, and I honestly think you did a great job. But truly, you're telling me your memoirs, you're telling me your story, but you're telling me in a way that at the end of each chapter, you've actually given me advice on what was successful about it. Like, what did you take away from it and what did you learn from it? So it's nice to see the chapter starts out with your stories and your history and then evolve into, okay, well, these are where the challenges were. This is what I learned from. Here's how I've actually used it later on in my life. So it's really nice that I get that kind of full cycle in every chapter and every two or three stories that you provide.
I'm glad to hear all of that feedback for the book because that's really what I want it to be. And whether I'm speaking, whether I'm coaching, whether I'm writing, I want to make sure that I'm showing up authentically. And one of the big topics that I speak about a lot is authenticity. And I figure, well, if I'm going to talk about this, I've got to do it my way. I've got to be me. I've got to embody that. And let's be honest, that also means sometimes knowing that some people aren't always going to grasp it. People aren't always going to love it, right? There will be some times where people are like, well, for this setting, we need more of this, that. I'm like, okay, that's great. Then I'm not your person because I want to make sure that I'm being authentic in every single way. And I think we talked about this and you touched on it a little bit. People can really show up with a lot of different personas, and that's fine. Time and a place for that. That's great. But I feel that this world is hungry for someone that's going to be the same, consistent all the way through and talk about, hey, I'm going to talk about my failures, which I talk about in the book. I'm going to talk about some embarrassments, which I talk about in the book. but I'm also going to say, hey, here's what I learned from it. Here's how I worked through it. Hopefully you can connect with that too. And I think when you can connect with people on a shared experience, a shared feeling, a shared struggle, you're going to resonate so much more with whatever that point that you're trying to make is, whatever that statement or idea or educational piece is. People are going to get more when you connect with them. And that's really where I build my whole entire speaking business out of, is trying to do that on a regular basis, being real, being authentic.
I love that, and I know your space is majority of the time with the younger generations, the more of like the schools and school environments, and then if they do have professionals, or you mostly universities, right? I kind of stalk you on LinkedIn. Don't I won't lie.
Oh, good. You're right. You got it. A lot of students, a lot of universities, but I am moving into the corporate space too. I've had a lot of opportunities this year for that. But I like to stay consistent with it. I'm not gonna, change up myself. I'm never gonna be like, well, now I'm in the corporate space, I gotta be different. I'm still gonna do the same thing, but it's to, broaden the horizon, get more audiences too, rather than just only being one specific type for me.
Talk to me about the corporate environment, because that's going to kind of lead into some of the other topics I want to talk about today. So tell me a little bit about the corporate environment. What are you working on? How do you get yourself into that corporate environment?
Yeah, with the corporate environment, it's 100% different. And it took me a little bit of time to get going, transitioning from speaking to a lot of educational staffs and then also students. So I was like, well, how do I transition this into, the corporate environment? And for me, before I started this journey, I worked in that environment. I did sales for the Philadelphia Eagles. I was marketing for the 76ers. I kind of knew a background, a little bit of what it's like to work in an office every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a lot of challenges from those experiences, and it helps me with my content. But for me, I am usually working with HR professionals. They're the ones that bring me in to speak to their environment, to everybody else, or whatever it might be. So HR is definitely the main ones that seek me out to come in. And as far as the content, it's a lot about workplace mental health and working past burnout, right? And rediscovering that resiliency. Because I think we all know people, when we're working in that environment, you see people that have just given up on life, right? Who are just going through the motions. I call it autopilot mode. They're there. I do this. I do that. I've got all these feelings. I've got all these emotions. I bottle them up. I've kept them inside, and I just go throughout my life without ever really making an impact or sharing anything with anyone. And to me, that's one of the saddest things. So when I come in, I'm like, all right, let's identify what's going on in this workplace. Let's talk about what signs and symptoms of burnout, depression, anxiety are, and let's do some strategies right now to kind of crack open people's emotional side a little bit. Let some of that out so that we can build deeper connections with each other in the workplace, which in turn is going to lead to a workplace that you do not hate when you're there with the people that, your employers and employees.
What did you think about COVID and remote working? Have you seen any changes in behavior or human behavior when you have worked with a lot of people, especially pre and post? Because you've been doing this a while, right? You've been talking for a while with mental health in the industries, right?
Correct. Yeah, I started in 2019 when I graduated college, so I'm 6 years in now at this point.
Jeez, you're that young? Oh,
yeah.
I'm dying. All right, keep going. I'm trying to hide my gray beard back here.
No. Alexander, you look great, man. You're not a day over 21, bro. Seriously.
Oh, stop. Keep going. You're helping my mental health.
Positive affirmations. That's what we do out here. But yeah, I really do see a big difference. I remember when I started doing this pre-COVID and what I've seen during COVID and then post-COVID, it's really night and day. It almost seems like it's two completely different societies that we're living in, if I'm being honest. And a lot of the challenges that I saw during COVID were the lack of connectivity with people. Everybody was struggling because they were remote and they weren't able to connect with people. And that was the big trouble. And then when we got out post-COVID, you have these opportunities to connect with people, but now people don't want to do it. Now people forget how to do it. And that creates a whole other host of issues and of problems. And one of the biggest things that I've seen, particularly in the corporate space, is the lack of ability to show and display empathy for what somebody else is going through in their life at the workplace. I've seen a big disconnect with that post-COVID.
But that's a common behavior that goes back to social media. And I'm going to talk about a little about AI and social media and how that's actually affecting it. But we've seen behavior has changed, right? It's so much easier, like trolling. How did trolling become to existence, right? It came into existence because people knew that, hey, I have an avatar, I have this whole fake virtual reality persona. Man, I can say whatever I want. I'm never going to get caught. Right? Accountability went out the door with social media. And that, I think, what was happening, we took it to the next level in the corporate world where I don't have to turn on my camera. I can just text. I can just put it in the chat there, and or I can just literally be in bed and I'm just gonna sit in the call because I don't want to get up and I don't want to do anything. And honestly, I don't need to really participate in this call. So if I do, I'll just throw in one word chats and just kind of like coast through. And that's when quiet quitting ended becoming a phenomenon. And it's like, whoa, quiet quitting. What is this? It's, yeah, people hate their job. COVID and remote work gave them the ability to literally check out, log in, move your cursor a little bit. There's these Amazon like things that you can actually buy that like literally moves your mouse or something like that every like so often, just to show that you're active and online and working. From a technology perspective, if you take it one step up in this, AI actually has become a replacement from a mental perspective, right? So back in history, we went from going into a therapist, going to the doctor's office, having to get out of the house, go somewhere. In about 10 years ago, in the HR space, in the benefits space, we moved over to what's called telemedicine.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, we started getting text messages on our phones and saying, hey, you want to chat to a nurse or you want to chat to a therapist? And you guys want to just go through there. Okay, so tell me your symptoms and I'll subscribe you something or I'll recommend a doctor. And so that was the primitive AI. Now, I always like to think of it. It's like the precursor, right? Because AI has been around for decades, to be honest. They've been working on it. I mean, the government has been doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes all the time. And I don't know if I'm going to get canceled now, but my first episode, I get canceled by the government.
It happens.
But yeah, it happens. Great. Next thing you know, I'll be right back. They won't have those old school hooks that just yanks me out. I just goes black screen.
Oh, yeah.
That was the beginning of it. And then technology started evolving, and then slowly they started producing this stuff. And then that's when Alexa came out. That's when Siri came out, right? The primitive stuff. Machine learning, right? Nobody really knew what machine learning was, right? And then we ended up moving with telemedicine, right? So we had live people to help us with issues. Tristan Harris, he did a presentation with one of his other colleagues that works in the AI space now. And they actually saw, once AI came out, they immediately loaded it onto Snapchat. So you're bored, no one's on. And so Snapchat, at the very, very top of it, they made very sure that on your messages, your chatbot message is always on the top. It can't like get lost in the shuffle of messages. So it always stays at top, like it's pinned. Basically, they acted as if they were a 13-year-old girl, alone, lonely. And then she needed help, right? So she wanted to talk to her friend. Her friends were all sleeping, whatever the scenario is. And she starts talking about, hey, I met this guy. And then progresses, this guy's much older. What do I do? How do I act? How to behave? And the AI algorithm totally told her to go out, have fun, meet the person. Basically, the chat just kept on encouraging her to go out with this, 30-year-old man and to ask for flowers and make sure that you're doing these great things. And like, holy crap, like where's the ethics in there, right? So like from your perspective and from a mental health perspective, what are we doing to kids that they're so addicted to social media that when they're sad, when they're depressed and no one's around to talk to them, or if they're lonely, right? There's a whole bunch of movies out there, right, that are doing like, hey, there was this one movie. This guy was like talking to this AI, and the AI basically was the girlfriend to him. And then
that's
like
her. The movie is
that's her. Okay, so it's her.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, but I was like, it's like, okay, well, what happens at that point? Take it to the next level. In Japan and in China and in other very high level technology industrial areas, they are building robots, and there's a huge sex industry for robots, and they're designing them now. They're making them as realistic as possible. I mean, I can go down a rabbit hole on the potential that AI is bringing into this. Another movie where they did it, this guy does an experiment and asks like an employee or something like that to come to his house in the middle of the mountains and stuff like that. And then he is testing the behavior of one of the AIs, and then how realistic, emotional, and a lot of emotional behavior and stuff like. It's a huge mind, like it's like a mind bending, futuristic movie. The question actually became, with that movie, flip the script. We're not testing the AI or the robot. The robot was actually testing us. And so they flipped it on us. So what does that say about our mental state and where we're going to the next level?
I think it's extremely concerning. I know I have one friend who's in the AI industry. It's actually like his business, and he's like working on creating AI that's helping corporations, yada, yada, yada. And he calls himself an AI optimist. And then he says on the other end, there's like AI doomsdayers, right? Who people think AI is going to lead to like iRobot, the 2001 film with Will Smith, things like that. I find myself somewhere in between because I've seen AI and the benefits of it, but he always told me, look at AI like a sandwich. You need to have human input. You have the AI, and then you have to have human kind of like on the end of it, analyzing it or whatnot. And I find, though, that when it comes to youth specifically, they're not mature enough to understand these ideas, right? Going back to your Snapchat example. So the problem that I think a lot of times we have here when it comes to mental health and AI is that AI is going based off of natural human feelings and emotions and things that we might feel. And that's great that it can do that, but at the same time, it's not accounting for those factors that it doesn't understand, like an age gap difference, or like that this person isn't mature enough to handle this certain particular situation. And so I think that causes a lot of problems and also makes the younger generation feel as though they're prepared for certain things when they're not. And we already know the dangers of social media and the rabbit holes you can go down with there and all the different problems. But I think when you add AI to social media, it creates this real intuitive beast, which can be good. But for people that aren't ready for that, it's a serious problem. And it magnifies those mental health challenges that may be lurking behind the scenes for an individual. And it can make it so much worse and so much deeper to get out of. And I've seen that a lot with a lot of the clients that I work with, because I do a lot of life coaching as well.
Do you always ask your friend, hey, what is the difference between AI, ChatGPT, and generative AI?
Yeah, he goes on and on about all the differences about that. And personally, I'm not 100% familiar with what some of the differences are. I do know that they're not all the same interface. AI, they're like, oh, AI, ChatGPT, same exact thing. It's like, well, there's very much a difference. I personally don't know what that difference is, but I do know that if you go into it without the proper education, it can really be an issue, as opposed to someone who knows what they're doing, knows how to input things, knows what the results are going to be tailored towards.
Yep. So ChatGPT is just importing, right? You input a prompt or a question, and then basically goes out into the internet, figures out, what's the best way to collect that data, bring it in, and just give you a response, right? So it's question and response kind of style. Generative AI is basically saying, okay, can I think for myself, right? So when we ask Sophie or when we ask any of these robots, like, hey, why did you do what you did? And you're asking it to think for itself, to try to come up with a reason for why it actually did it, and it walks you through the process. Right. Now, Tristan Harris does an actual show on Joe Rogan, and they explain another scenario that they do. While testing the AI, they try to put it through ethics test, compliance testing, and then they're trying to push their AI data sets or their software, and they're trying to push it to see if it's willing to cross certain basic lines. So, in Will Smith's movie,
iRobot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So in iRobot, you have the three human rules, right? Mm-hmm. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not cheat. No, just kidding. The three rules. Don't harm a human, don't kill a human, and don't do anything that would lead to harming a human being, right? Mm-hmm. Well, they actually have those rules built into AI, and they're trying to use it. Like one of the rules is do not pretend to be human,
Right.
right? So you know that Google's recaptcha or CAPTCHA that they have, like if you go to a website and then you try to get to the website and the website says, hey, please pick on the pictures.
Mhm.
Well, there's a deeper meaning for that. They've been doing that for years, right?
Oh, yeah.
Why? Because Google's been working on AI. Well, what we used to call it was machine learning. So that's really the basic fundamental theory of AI. It's machine learning. Basically, program loops that go over and over again. And it keeps teaching us that every time it does a function and it repeats the function, it learns from it. So it says, what did I do in this last loop or this last sequence of code or whatever or behavior? And then how do I add on to it, right? So it tries to teach itself over and over again by repeating these loops. Now, how does it do that? Well, the very, very primitive version is that we need a massive amount of data to figure it out. So CAPTCHA was not designed to protect us from websites or from hackers, from bots. It was really, I think personally, this is my personal opinion, that Google started using it as a primitive collecting data and massive amounts of data from users in order to do what? So every time you click on a picture and say identify the picture, right? Well, it gives you all different variations of a picture, right? Now, the more variations it has, the more AI can figure out, oh, well, they look like this. They like a cat. What does a cat look like? Well, there's thousands and thousands of pictures of what a cat looks like. So it collects all that data and then says, okay, so if I pull up a picture and say, what does this look like, right? It turns into, oh, it looks like a cat, right? So they've been doing that for years, and they've been using all of us to help collect all of that data.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Wow.
So one of the other questions I wanted to ask you, especially since you're in the mental health field and in that industry, ethics is important, right?
Ideally.
Right? I mean, we know that we know that we can't trust our government. We know we can't trust our politicians, right? Right now, we're having issues with policies. There's no policies around this. I mean, it is wild, wild west.
Yeah.
Crazy enough, it really is like, every movie that we always watch that's futuristic, it all comes true. So I'm really hoping that the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, doesn't come out and kill us all.
Oh my goodness. It might.
Or save the day. Right? But it's true though, because HBO did that Westworld, right? I mean, there is a whole industry I was talking about earlier in China and Japan where they are actually building out real live, like the material texture and the facial recognitions, facial movements, right? As realistic as possible right now. That's super, super scary and close to Westworld, right?
Yeah.
So my question to you from a, health industry perspective, what do we do with ethics, right? Like, where do we stand on that? Because bring it back to that Snapchat. What do we do? Like, where is there a line that who's responsible for it, right? And then the second question I'll ask is from a corporate perspective, how do we kind of educate them? Because you're in that education space, right? You're in that coaching, speaking environment. So you're constantly educating and giving out information. How would you tailor that when you start moving more into the corporate environment from ethics perspective?
I think, yeah, definitely great question. And a lot of different variances, a lot of different answers. So again, this would just be kind of where I come from, what I think would be best, and what the research and the people that I've worked with done would suggest would be best. When it comes to ethics, we all have an idea of what that is when you say ethics, yet everybody's implementation of ethics is a little bit different. And it's kind of hard to tell somebody, okay, this is the one way for every single situation that we have to follow these rules. It can be tough. Now, for AI, you could do don't kill a human, don't harm a human, don't interfere with a human, like an iRobot, right? But when it comes to actual human beings and what we're dealing with, ethics can be bendable. It can be pliable. The problem is that when somebody is not incorporating ethics into their thinking, into their implementation of a policy, into their everyday life, that's when you have things such as just greed and selfishness start to come alive and take over. And I think what's really important is that when it comes to ethics, there has to be, although they can be different for everybody in a sense, there has to be a general guideline. Oh, hey,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we're going to stick to this general rule, and we're going to make sure that these things aren't totally distorted in a way. You know what I mean? And whether that's something as simple as we're not going to, I don't know, lure people, like you said with the Snapchat thing. We're not going to make people feel inferior, whatever that is. I mean, that's for different people to decide, but there has to be a general guideline that we're going to stick to. Otherwise, people are just going to take things and do whatever they feel best is for them, not considering somebody else. And that comes back to what I said earlier about empathy and human connection. We're getting further and further away from that. We see each other and people as statistics or as the enemy or as you're for that person, you're for that person, so you're against me. We're going to war against each other, right? We're not having that connection and saying, hey, what might this person be thinking or feeling based off of what I do? And should that adjust what I do? We're not having those type of conversations in inner dialogues, therefore making us kind of, in a way, robotic in I need to do what's best for me all the time, my way, not yours. You don't matter. My way is great. Yours is terrible. Where is that going to lead us, right? That's a serious problem. So I think that's a big part for ethics. And I'll answer your second part after, you have something here.
No, but I agree with you. Ethics has always been like next semester I'm taking an ethics class, so ethic leadership, and I'm really, really excited about it because that is very important for at least for my dissertation and the research I'm going to be going into, which is followership within the leadership industry. So from an ethics perspective, it's really important because one of the questions that's been circulating a lot and a lot of theories going around, whether they're right or wrong, I'm not sure. But when OpenAI fired their CEO, what was it for? Right? There's got to be something going on internally for a board to let go of the original creator of AI. Like you don't get rid of your star programmer that like literally built AI from scratch, right? And then you get rid of him for what reason, right? And then there's other different type of CEOs out there that are working on AI platforms. I mean, there's Claude, there's Gemini, there's there's Llama. There's the only difference between all of them is, so when you think of AI, right? We always think of it as like these futuristic, this robots, right? But they're not. There's just a collection of code that is just functioning together as one. You can think of it as packets, you can think of it as folders, you can think of it as like, a collection of line item codes, right? And then they function as one, right? And it's very, very complex. I'm dumbing this down really, really bad. But right now we're finding out that Facebook wants to release open source their AI packets, their AI database. They're releasing it. And is that ethical? Should you open source the code? Because at that point, where's the limit, right? So do you think where I think it's an extreme with Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, he is, I think, fighting really, really hard. I don't care what all the conspiracy theories saying about him, whether he's right or wrong. I think he's on the right side of it, just from my experience with him, just from my interviews watching him. He's been very consistent. He's been very honest. From at least what he says, that he has a really good publicist. Okay, versus someone else like Zuckerberg. Like he's sat in front of congressional hearings and just lied through his teeth. Why? Because he point blank out says, "Oh, we didn't know about it," but like he's doing all this stuff. He's got several whistleblowers. I mean, Tristan Harris and then Frances Hogan, right? She was the engineer that had up Facebook, and she whistleblowed on how AI is targeting 13-year-old girls and making them feel horrible about themselves and feeding off of that just so they can boost up likes and boost up, like, right? Because if nobody likes me, no one like hits like on me, what are you going to do? You're going to dive deeper into the Facebook matrix, or what was it called? Metaverse that failed?
Yeah, that's something like that. People like buying
like that. I don't know. Facebook keeps failing.
True.
But from that perspective, so from two leadership perspectives, right? What do you do? So now when AI is locking down, they have really, really complex encryption and security protocols to keep ChatGPT locked down. And Sam Altman, he refuses to release the next generation without really doing extensive testing. And he did say, well, one of the things that he likes that the next generation he hasn't released yet is that you can have full blown conversations with it, just like Siri, but to the point where like it's next level. I actually have ChatGPT on my phone, and I tried using the voice to talk.
Mhm.
I used one guy's personality. Dude was mean. I mean, he was just blunt, to the point, like no emotions. And then I used an actual girl's voice, and she was much more polite. Like, whoa, are they building in personalities into these voices as well? And that's kind of a little scary because look at the deep fake faces, right? Now they have deep fake voices, right? So you can hear yourself, right? I mean, who was some famous actress sued for stealing her voice,
Mhm.
right? I mean, that's next level because you can take the voice and then you can start doing music to it. I mean,
Yeah.
the opportunity, the potential is crazy. So where do we cross that? Where does that line stop from an ethics perspective? And to bring it back to you, sir, you have CEOs, one that's hard lockdown of the algorithms and the data source or the programming source, and then you have another one that's saying, yeah, have fun. Here it is. Here it is. Hack it if you want. And the whole point of open sourcing is basically for you to read the code and say, okay, how can I manipulate and change the code and tailor it or learn from it? Or, well, open source really is meant to learn and to make it better and to make the technology a lot better. But if you have something like AI and you want to make it better, just delete the 3 lines of thou shalt not kill. And then what do we have? So do you think CEOs should be held at a higher standard of ethics at this point? Because now we're getting to the next level of ethics and
Yeah.
morality and doing the right thing and not destroying the world because like look what's happening right now. I mean, AI is learning from us as human beings. What are we in the middle of right now? A huge I mean, there's just wars going on left and right, right? We have the Russia-Ukraine going on right now. We have the Israel and the Palestine going on right now, right? How many other wars do we have that, I mean, Africa internally, each one of their states has civil war constantly. AI is reading and watching and all that. So when I watch these things, and I'm really curious to know what you think mentally from a mental perspective. Doesn't it mind fuck you to watch like AI and say, hey, would you kill human beings or would you like end the world? And then they pause. Why does AI need to pause? People have said it's because the program's thinking, right? If you have those 3 rules built in, you shouldn't have to think. It should prompt you to automatically say, no, my programming says, thou shalt not kill human beings, right? Why does it think? Back to my question. CEOs, higher ethics responsibility, and then next level politicians. But forget politicians.
Yeah. Politicians, man, I don't even know what to say about that. But as far as CEOs, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, Alexander, I think there is a higher responsibility when you are the CEO of a major company and what you do can impact thousands, millions, if not billions of people. There should be a high level of accountability for what you're going to do and what you're going to unleash on the world. And their argument might be, well, we can never make everybody happy, obviously, but you can put the greater good of people ahead of a profit. You can put the greater good of people and the welfare and well-being of people ahead of awards. And my problem here is a lot of these CEOs, I don't think they think that way. I think they are thinking in the sense of how can I make myself the best possible brand that I can? How can I get the most money? How can I get the most fame? This is at the core of what's at a lot of people's hearts, Alexander. And that is a problem. We need a change of heart sometimes to be able to see some of these problems fixed. And that change of heart comes from, what is it? Oh, yeah, that's right. Connecting with people and understanding that we all have struggles. We have shared struggles. struggles. We've got to see that. We've got to acknowledge that. And we've got to change the way that we approach life, knowing that what we do impacts others. When you go throughout your life not caring about the impact it makes on other people, you unleash things that hurt other people. And unfortunately, I'm not trying to call out the CEOs of America. No,
Oh, no,
like that.
No, we love all of them. Okay, we love every single one of them.
We love every single CEO.
I love Zuckerberg. I love Harris. I love Musk. Screw it. I even love Trump.
Oh, God.
I am not Bill Maher. I do not have his money. I do not have his balls. Okay, I love Trump. I love everybody.
It's at the end of the day, these people are doing things, whether they realize it or not, that are affecting mass population. And there needs to be higher accountability for a person in that position when what they do has that type of huge impact. And from a mental perspective, as those who aren't CEOs like me and you, we've got to really be on guard too about what we're consuming and what we're feeding ourselves, so to speak, every single day. I always like to imagine I put a filter up on myself, so to speak, as soon as I wake up every day, and certain things I've got to make sure that filter blocks out, because I know that's going to take me down a place that's not going to be good for my mental health, or I know that being consumed by this is going to put me in a place where I'm going to feel that anxiety start to build up more and more, right? So I think although there's a lot of responsibility on CEOs, there's a responsibility on us to be able to better filter out certain things that aren't going to be mentally productive for us, or that are going to kickstart certain things in our lives that are going to be destructive. So I think there is some accountability on you and I as well.
So that's why I love your book. Okay, I'm not trying to plug it in, but it's very relevant to what you just said. It is something that you talk about your own accountability. You realize the mistakes that you made. You couldn't fix them at the time, but you have done the work that you needed to do. Maybe it was through writing the book, right? Just to plug it back in here. Look, it's a beautiful cover. But even though, but that is true. I mean, this is kind of why I like your book, and this is kind of why I've been taking ridiculous notes in this. Okay, I mean, like, notes upon notes. I mean, like, I do pages in here because this is kind of like a diary for me too. Because like, as I'm reading your story, I'm writing my own story in the margins and saying, yeah, like I can compare to that, or he did that, I didn't do that, right? So it's kind of like my own little diary, a mini diary within your diary to talk about that. We do need to hold ourselves accountable. How do you feel about, you've been in a lot of schools lately, right? You've done like, I think 2 or 3 speaking engagements at universities. How do you deal with these kids in universities? Because there's a whole thing about universities and kids now with, with like schools and school campuses and having their own rights, their opinions, and then advocating for them. And then this whole thing with MIT and Harvard, about ethics and Palestine and Israel, not to make it very political here, but all these students now that like are trying to advocate, freedom of speech and their ability to assemble and the ability to protest, but with the lack of real educational understanding from a history perspective, but also from people to people. I mean, they're attacking their own classmates. Mm-hmm. Like, schools are like, especially in the when you get to the higher education, that should be a grounds and a campus full of safe spaces. That's why we have student unions, right? We have fraternities or sororities, or you have like different groups that you can connect and identify with, and then feel like you're safe, but still have a community of the union of the schools, right? You can collaborate in collaboration. How do you deal with that? Like, you've literally been in the trenches. You've been on campus several times. Have you seen behavior like that of changing or not? Especially now that AI enables people to be like, yeah, you're right. Whatever you're saying, you're right, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, in the past 6 years I've been doing this, I've been to hundreds of different colleges and high schools and middle schools all over the country, 38 different states. I've kind of seen it all backgrounds, all socio and economic levels, multiple different types of college campuses too. So I've seen a plethora of different ones. What I've noticed recently, though, based off of what you're talking about and a lot of the things that is going on, I think a lot of these issues are coming from an idea that people are immersing themselves in information that they want to see. people are taking a side that they agree with. And that's fine. It's human nature.
And the algorithm does what?
It feeds into that, and it just keeps giving you more and more and more of what you want to see.
I keep forgetting you're in that generation.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a little bit older than you.
I thought you were 21, Alexander. That's what I was told. I thought I was 6 years old.
I wish, man. No, but I actually remember you just referenced. I mean, you're out of school 6 years. I mean, I'm out of school. Not giving you that number. But yeah, you're right. You're right. You just came out of that whole environment, right? I mean, you're still in it. You're in that generation. You're Gen. What is it now? Gen Z, Gen I, Gen. You know what they're saying now? Now that AI is coming in, like in a few years, these kids now that are growing up, like the 10, 15s that are growing up with AI. Jonathan Ross, he's one of the CEOs for another AI platform. He says the next name that we have for the generations that come in is Gen AI or next gen. So they're going to NEXGEN. Yeah, wow. Lowercase NEX, uppercase G, lowercase EN. I was like, dude, like he just coined the next generation. And I'm like, that's gonna be crazy because what do we do at that point when your best friend is a computer?
You know, I could give so many thoughts on how I think there's some serious issues with from such a young age, the computer in your face, the screen in your face, the tablet in your face. Like you and I, we didn't grow up like that. I grew up with my mom, and I was fortunate to have this. My mom and dad would read to me every night, and I was encouraged to read books. In my free time, I enjoy reading. I like engaging in
imagination.
Imagination, right? This is how we grew up, and I think the problem now with a lot of people growing up where screens in your face, YouTube's in your face, whatever's in your face constantly, it is almost overwhelming with the amount of information, and it makes you lose your own imagination because you're like, well, I'm not impressed by anything anymore because I'll just Google it and I see it. And so why would I imagine something where if I can Google it, I can see someone else's imagination and watch that? And there's just a lot of issues that are going to come later in life with that, I personally believe.
So what's your next book?
My next book? That's a good question. I'm taking a little bit of a break, Joan, right?
Come on.
Because there's a
I
process,
just gave you a good topic.
I have, yeah, I think my next book will probably be along the lines of
balancing AI, balancing personal life and AI.
Maybe. I think it's going to be trying to find something along the lines of finding your little pocket of peace in this crazy world. Finding a way for you to escape some of this stuff, hear it, be acknowledging everything, but also not let it into the deepest parts of you to where you're miserable, you're unhappy, and you don't even want to interact with anybody. I have a lot of thoughts on how to do that. I've got some writing on that, but I think that'll probably be
Look at that. First I plug in your first book here, right? From rock bottom to rock solid. And then now I can't wait to see your next book come out.
Yeah, we'll get there. We're gonna get there. Absolutely.
Awesome. The last thing I want to ask you is I wanted to circle back and I think just keep talking a little bit more about your corporate opportunities and the next level that you're gonna be working on. So in the corporate environment, especially when it's remote hybrid office environment, right? We've changed our behaviors now, right? COVID has definitely done a number on us psychologically. I always find it very interesting how quickly, like human beings, we are designed to be lazy. Least we like to do things that are the least resistance, in order to conserve as much energy as possible, right? AKA, and I said a very nice fancy term, it's a phrase that basically says I'm lazy, right? I don't want to do it. If I don't have to get up, I don't want to do it.
Right.
You ever see that movie WALL-E?
Oh yeah. Yeah, the people, they're like, yeah.
And then they realize, I have to get off and walk on my two feet. At the end of it, it was so hard. It's so much easier to be lazy and to digress into bad behavior because it's easier than it is to work hard on this better behavior. So you mentioned a little bit about, how do we stop and work on ourselves? We don't want to work on ourselves, right? Like, my family is a family of immigrants. My mom and dad never made it through high school. My mom, 4th grade, my dad, 8th grade.
Wow.
So my dad came here when he was about 14 years old, and he worked in he worked in the kitchen in the sinks, right? For up until he was like 21, right? He never made it to college. He tried to go to college, he just couldn't do it, and thank God my father is old school. Like the older generations, they literally had like they knew how to work in life and find other neural pathways to construct their way of being it. My father, thank God, has been a successful immigrant. So I never had the education. So I pushed myself. So when I do things like this, when I read, I'm getting my doctorates, it's because I saw it from where my parents came from. And I want to make them proud and make myself proud of where I never had going to school and reading and my mom reading to me, my dad reading to me, right? It was like my parents were at work. And then when I turned 14, 15, yeah, I started going to my dad's restaurant out in Long Island, and I started cleaning the floors. I started cleaning my very first job was mopping the floors. I'm not gonna tell you how old I am. I was in the legal age and I had parental consent.
Of course.
Right? But I learned how to mop the floors after the restaurant closed. Right? That was my very first job, and in a very young age. But then my parents didn't want that, and they immediately switched it over until I wasn't allowed, and I learned all my multiplications literally in the back kitchen of our parents' restaurant. So
it's a great story, man.
But it's hard these days, right? These next generations, we have helicopter parents, or we have like the millennials that take it to the next level, the coddling, the next level. And I don't blame them. I don't think that's a bad way of doing it, but there should be a balance, like you said. And now your challenge in your job is going to be 10 times harder because you're bringing in these next generations, and they don't know what it's like to do hard work. And unfortunately, a lot of the elders, these baby boomers, they're unfortunately, they're getting to that age where if they don't tell their story, we don't know that story. And AI now and social media stuff, we can't tell that story, or nobody has the attention span to read those stories anymore. So how do you bring that into the corporate environment? Because there is a huge uptick of younger generations, as well as the older generations, but that's because our American retirement system is messed up. But how do you balance that? It's when kids coming in and saying, "Hey, I want to be the CEO tomorrow."
It's tough. You have to. I think one of the things I talk about is we have to establish a workplace that is, I guess a way to put it is diverse in expectations, right? We have to understand we have to expand our expectation to include what we didn't plan for. And when you have people coming in and like, well, I want to be the CEO tomorrow, I deserve it because I know this or that, you have to also balance that out with the person who's been working.
Buddy, you ChatGPT that damn knowledge. You don't know anything.
In a perfect world, that would be great to be able to say that. But I think we really need to establish in that place of work, we have to establish, hey, if you're going to work here, you need to understand that your expectation is going to change because you're part of something bigger. This is not just about you. It's not just about what you want. You are part of an ecosystem, of an environment. And the way that this functions is that we all collaborate. We share ideas. Everybody's ideas are valid. Everyone's ideas and what they feel are already real because they feel it and it's happening to them.
Yeah.
With that being said, there has to be an understanding that you and the way you think is not the only way that everybody thinks. And we've got to find that common ground. I'm so big on finding common ground and shared connection because that's when walls start to break. And that's when people can say, hey, you know what? That young Gen Z kid, I don't really like this or that. But hey, we both can agree on this. Or, oh, that baby boomer, he's blah, blah, blah. We can agree on this. And all of a sudden, that's where the culture shifts and changes, and it's finding a way to implement strategies to bring that out in people.
I love it, man. I love it. I want to thank you so much. We're up at the hour, and I promise I know you have things to do. It's the middle of the day. But I want to thank you so much for doing this with me. This has been amazing. So one more time, I'm going to plug in your book here because I think it's awesome. I can't wait to finish it. Honestly, and the reason why it's gone slow is because I'm taking a lot of notes in it. So it's not just an easy read. It is really a deep, self-reflective book that I really enjoy, and it's helping me out so much. So guys, if you guys get a chance, if anybody's watching, go to go grab his book. It's on Barnes & Noble. It's on Amazon. Anywhere you can find a book, go grab it. If not, email us. I will throw Scott's info up there. You can email him, get a copy of it directly from him if you want. Go on his LinkedIn. You can definitely find him on his LinkedIn. He is a human being. He is not. He's down to earth, even though he's a big celebrity and he's getting up there. He definitely will hit you up and respond to you. I'm living proof of it. I went up to him, said hello, and here we are today. So, Scott, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Grab his book, guys. It's a great read, and thank you so much for doing this.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Alexander. It's wonderful to be a part of it. You're doing great things, and I'm happy to, be a friend of yours and help any way that I can and to support you in your journey.
You're the best. Thank you so much.